Item number 3 on the agenda, we're going to do items 3 and 4. Invocation, I think Mr. Keith Giles, is he present? Yes. All right, we'll call you forward here. The invocation is going to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Morgan.
Let us stand and pray together. Father, we come before you to say thank you. Thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here this afternoon. Lord, we thank you for the many and abundant blessings that you've bestowed upon us. We thank you for life itself. Lord, we thank you for our health. We need to fulfill in calling our callings that you put upon us. Lord, we thank you for sustenance and friendship, and we thank you for the ability to be involved in our community and the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. We thank you as well for the freedom to worship. Lord, we thank you for the freedom that we have afforded us as citizens of this great nation. We thank you, Lord, for loving us even though we're so unworthy of your boldness and grace love. The scripture declares that as citizens we ought to obey the governing authorities that you have established over us as authorities to promote peace, order, and justice. Therefore, I pray for our county commission chairman, our sheriff, and the various levels of county officials, and this assembly that's gathered here today. Lord, I'm asking you that you would graciously grant them wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our times, a sense of the welfare and true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and righteousness, confidence in what is good and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony even when there's honest disagreement, personal peace in their lives and joy in their task. I pray for the agenda set before them today. Please give an assurance of what would please you and would benefit those who live and work around our great county. And it's in Jesus' blessed name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor and Chaplain Mr. Keith Giles and Commissioner Morgan for the Pledge of Allegiance. Next item on the agenda, item number 5, we'll look for a motion from the board for approval of tonight's agenda.
Chairman, I make a motion to approve the agenda with the removal of item 9.1, a resolution which includes the sale of alcohol by the drink on Sundays, and replace it with a resolution authorizing a referendum to allow package sales on Sunday by retailers of malt beverages and wine.
We have a motion. Look for a second. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you, board. Next item on the agenda, item 6, is approval of the minutes from the commission meeting minutes of January 2nd, 2018. And item 6.2 is the executive session meeting minutes from January 2nd of 2018.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the public comments section. The public comments portion of the meeting is reserved for comments from the public. I do ask you to be respectful. Keep comments limited to 3 minutes. There was a sign-up sheet in the back. If you miss a sign-up sheet, feel free to come up, but we'll call in order those that signed up. This is not for the zoning. This is strictly for public comments area of the agenda. We welcome and appreciate the opportunity to hear from you. If we can appoint anybody to help you with tonight's issue, we will appoint, but typically the board does not respond or try to come to a conclusion. With that being said, we'll start calling that from the sign-up sheet. Mr. Steve Fuller, please come to the front, state your name and address, please.
My name is Steve Fuller. I live at 904 Clem Lowell Road. My wife Donna and I own a small vineyard in the Clem community. On several occasions, I've expressed my thanks to Michelle Morgan for her support of the vineyards and the growing wine industry in Carroll County. Word of the quality of our grapes and wine has spread throughout Georgia, the Southeast, the Atlantic coast states, and other parts. Jerry Culver's wines have won awards in states as far away as California and New York. Recently, he's pulled in some international awards for his wines. This brings in tourist dollars, and with that comes tax revenue for the county. Today, this body will vote on allowing farm wineries to open their tasting rooms on Sunday and allowing them to sell their wines. I urge you to vote yes on this proposal. We are losing to our neighbors in Alabama and Georgia counties to the north who are allowed to open their tasting rooms on Sunday. The question of Sunday alcohol sales for the county in general has also come up. This subject has been broached several times in the last few years. It sounds like the people of Carroll County are asking to be heard. This is a complex issue, and emotions tend to run high over just the mention of it. It's time that the people of Carroll County get a chance to make this decision. Let the democratic process take its course and put it on the ballot. To deny the people of this county the right to make this decision flies in the face of the very principles that this country was founded on. Whatever the outcome of the vote, the people of Carroll County will have their say.
Thank you. Rhonda Rowell.
Rhonda Rowell, 229 Little New York Road, and I want to ask you to consider the resolution to amend the ordinances for sale of farm winery on Sundays. I'm working with Jerry Culbert, Little Vine Vineyards. We're working on growing a vineyard our own, and that would afford us more opportunity to progress for ourselves and the opportunity for tourism dollars to come into this county. A lot of people say, well, I can't get there on Saturday, I come out on a Sunday afternoon, but we're not open because there's no opportunity to sell. As for the package sales on Sunday, I said let the people vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Peoples.
Stephen Peoples, 20 Windridge Court, Carrollton, Georgia. I'm the pastor of Root Road Baptist Church. First of all, I wish to express my deepest gratitude for and respect to each of you for your service to the citizens of Carroll County. And as a Carroll County resident, I know that we all share a vested interest in our county and desire for it to be a place that is not only a safe haven to live, work, and raise families, but a place that attracts others to live. I stand respectfully at this podium, thankful for the opportunity to address a subject matter that is certainly loaded with debate. And with that understood, I wish to make my comments brief but yet thought-provoking. From the most recent headlines to a Senate committee hearing that I was privy to listen to when the issue was addressed by our legislators at the Capitol in Atlanta, to the most recent headlines in our own newspaper, the number one and prevailing concern is lost revenue by not selling alcohol on Sundays. What is being ignored is the amount of money that is spent on law enforcement, jail administration, rehabilitation, not to mention the damage and costs that are caused to individuals, families, communities, workplaces where a price tag cannot be placed. The bottom line is this: where there is increased availability, there is increased sales, and increased sales means increased consumption, and increased consumption certainly means increased problems, such as DUIs, traffic incidents, fatalities, family disturbances, law enforcement calls, law enforcement involvement. The cost of alcohol abuse on society is staggering. Billions of dollars are spent in the areas of motor vehicle accidents, law enforcement calls, health care, both physical and mental, as well as loss of productivity in the workplace, family and children's services, probate court costs. The list goes on and on and on due to alcohol abuse and the impact on families, too much to mention. I've been in full-time ministry over 26 years, and I can't tell you the number of individual lives that have been ruined and taken to an early grave, not to mention families and communities that have been gravely disrupted and torn apart that I've unfortunately had to deal with, not only in ministry, but within the confines of my own family, I being a byproduct of an alcoholic father, stepfather, and all that went along with it. All in all, there's never been anything good come from alcohol. The Bible condemns alcohol and its effects. Proverbs chapter 23, verses 29 through 35. I could list a litany list of numerous biblical principles and many more that I don't have time to quote all the passages, but it would be extremely difficult to utilize the Bible in any way to advocate drinking when today's economy of alcohol and the Bible's economy of alcohol is incomparable. I would take notice that not a one of you are drinking this evening. No one has an alcoholic beverage on stage tonight. The reason being, it impairs one's judgment. It halts the train of thought. It causes one to not make wise decisions. And we cannot be naive enough to come to the realization that opening the doors to even more sales in yet another time frame, as we're discussing Sunday sales, will do nothing more than increase more very costly measures that I've already mentioned. I would seriously doubt that any parent, guardian, grandparent in the room this evening would dare allow their child, grandchild, or loved one to head down a path that would be detrimental for them in any way, shape, or form. And as gatekeepers of our community that has been entrusted with our community, I respectfully ask those of you serving as county commissioners to vote this issue down once and for all. This is already caused much detriment being caused by all forms of alcohol sales and consumption. Why increase the availability, which certainly increases sales, no question, which means increased consumption, which will certainly increase even more problems. I ask if you are here this evening and you stand in opposition to Sunday sales and for it to be placed on the ballot May 22nd, would you please stand to your feet? We of the community of faith certainly stand on biblical principles and vote according to biblical principles, comparing candidates' platforms
We're
for
out of
biblical
3 minutes.
principles. Again, thank you so very much for your time this evening.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tommy Driver.
I'll keep the time.
Let the alarm go off. Let it so you can hear the alarm.
Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Tommy Driver. I live at 2505 Old Union Road, Carrollton, Georgia, 30116. And there's really no need for me to speak after that. So thank you, brother. I want to thank you, commissioners, again, for allowing us to speak tonight on such a volatile, debated issue. And I'm going to take it from a different approach. Before I became the pastor of Morris Hill Baptist Church, I was a financial analyst at Greenway here in Carrollton. And as leaders, every time we make decisions, there are financial costs to those decisions. So I simply ask, how are we going to pay for the increased cost? Pastor Stephen just stated, and I will echo, increased sales equals increased consumption. Increased consumption will equal more vehicle accidents, increased health care costs, increased need for more law enforcement officers, and the list goes on and on and on and on. The fact is, in the United States, while we're meeting tonight, 1 hour, 2 people will die from alcohol-related accidents. I have heard many debates and many sides on this, and I've heard from many that this is something that must go to the ballot. And I know many of you have promised that that would go to the ballot. I've heard in an email Commissioner Power sent to me, he stated it is the people's choice, not the commissioners. Commissioner Anderson, on Facebook stated, we live in a democracy. 7 people should not decide things that are significant in nature and impact the entire county. Truthfully, you guys, women, respected commissioners, you make decisions all the time that never reach the ballot. And I just ask simply, if that is going to be the argument, that everything be placed to the ballot for the county to decide. And the reason is a couple of years down the road, when the increased cost of health care, the increased need for law enforcement officers, the discussion will come up to increase the millage rate on property taxes to pay for such increases. So let us as citizens also decide per the ballot on our property tax increase as well. So not just place one thing to the ballot, but place all. Again, I urge you to vote no on this issue tonight. The impact is too great. I respectfully, I serve on another board, Michelle Morgan, and I respect all that you do, but I would respectfully ask that she would recuse herself from this vote, as it's public knowledge that she owns businesses that would profit for one more day of Sunday sales. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Tommy. Mr. Jerry Culver.
Thank you for the opportunity to come here and speak tonight. I just want to tell you that Many years ago, when I live at 565 North Hewlett Road, Villa Rica, Georgia. Many years ago, when I came here, when asking you guys to approve the Sunday sales, I was working from the perspective that I'm the owner of Little Vine Vineyards and have been so since about 2008 or so. And just wanted to say that when we first started this endeavor with the county several years ago, we had a sort of a promise from the commissioner, Mr. Chappell, at the time, that he would support us in every way that he could. And I would like to ask you guys to vote yes on, on the items before you today, because this is America, and all the people have an opportunity to express their opinion. And if you don't let this on the ballot, we will not have the opportunity to express our opinion. Whichever way it goes, I'll be happy with it. It won't, and I'll know that the system works, basically. And I'll be simply happy with that, however it works. But I would like to urge you to please vote yes on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Culver. Carla H. Edwards.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Carla Edwards, 304 East Miles Road.
Can you
Carroll.
pull that mic down, please?
I'm losing my voice. Carla Edwards, 304 East Miles Road, Carrollton, 30116. Thank you again. I'm a taxpayer and a voter. I'm also an adult child of a former alcoholic. It's a horrific way to grow up. And, you know, maybe selling on Sunday may not make a difference, but I believe it will. There's a young man from the Atlanta area. His name is Edwin Jackson. He was killed Sunday by an alleged drunk driver. Don't know if they bought it on Sunday, but chances are they did. As a mom, this breaks my heart. This man was 26 years old, and a promising career in the NFL. That doesn't matter. He's dead, and somebody's heart is breaking besides mine. And I beg you, please do not allow this to go on the ballot. There are children who will be affected by these sales. I know I am one of them. Well, I was one of them a long time ago. That's my biggest thing. My issue is protecting the children. You know, adults, you're big, you can make your own decisions. Children, you have to live with the decisions that the parents make. That's not fair. That they have to deal with an alcoholic as a parent. So I urge you to consider these things before you vote. Because, you know, who's going to vote for it? Maybe the people that profit from it and the people who will drink. And it's not fair to the children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. Mr. Robert Young.
Good evening. I'm Robert Young. I live at 203 Walker Road in Carrollton, Georgia, 30117. I'd just like to add, we have an ordinance on the books for the county now that basically describes what can be done with alcohol sales. It's worked for a long time. As a citizen of this county for a long time now, I see no reason why we should change that ordinance. If we should change it, we should change it in the other direction to limit sales, not to expand sales. Thank you.
Mr. David Newbern. Okay, rezoning, thank you. Ms. Patricia Williams.
Hi, Patricia Williams. I live at 2417 Lovern Mill Road in Bowden, Georgia. I have come here tonight, and now I didn't realize that all of this was going on, but I came here in regards to animal control. There's an issue in the county. The problem stems far and it stems wide. It has been ongoing. I was here 4 years ago, but I came here tonight because I had 16 of my 18 chickens killed by a pack of dogs that could potentially take down a small child if they took out that many chickens and didn't even eat them. But I'm going to stem all that till the next commissioner meeting, because out of respect for everybody that's here, this issue is a little more concerning because the crime in this county has been going up and up and up over the last 5 years. It has been tremendous. I have watched everything from little babies being killed to people walking down the street beating other people. I mean, it's just, and it may or may not be alcohol sales. But at the same time, the vinery, the first gentleman that came up and spoke, he made comment that he has record awards and sales nationwide and all that. Let it stay nationwide. I don't want it here in Carroll County, and I'm sorry, but I will say what I think. I just think that it should stay someplace else, and it might not be, you know, what everybody else wants or what everybody else is going to profit from. I think vineries are great. It's an ag thing. That's fine, but it doesn't mean that we need to bring more alcohol sales to Carroll County. My president talks about things like this other pastor just mentioned, to put it on for the vote. Give it the vote. This isn't a private agreement. This is a whole county of people that want to make this decision, and I think that we should all be allowed to make that decision. And if things don't change, my president also talks about things like draining the swamp, because there's people that have been here a long time, but the people are who vote you all in, and we would like you to let us make that decision. Thank you.
Kelly Reynolds.
All right, thank you. Kelly Reynolds, 1346 North Highway 27, Roopville, Georgia. Chairman, commissioners, thank you for allowing us this time, and thank you for what you do for this county, each one of you, and I surely do appreciate it. Again, I've been a lifelong resident of the Tice, Roopville community my whole life. And this afternoon, I come with some concerns and questions regarding Sunday sales in rural Carroll County. A couple things I want to run by you. I have asked this question among several of you, and yet no one gave me a clear answer. And the question is, what good will come to rural Carroll County from Sunday alcohol sales? And I still have no answer to this day. Now, I've heard, well, Kelly, there'll be very little tax revenue, okay? But we know the cost will be much higher than the little revenue that comes in. Now, we also know that anyone can get alcohol 7 days a week in other places, in other cities, here in our county. And so I don't see a reason why to bring it in our rural areas, where many of you say you're fighting for us that live in the rural areas of Carroll County. And secondly, I've heard this, well, it's the people's right to vote. Again, on social media, from one of the commissioners, it's democracy. Well, I believe that is why the commissioners have been voted in as gatekeepers. Let me say this right here. I appreciate the ones who have stood in the gap for us in years past, the decades past, that have not allowed this to happen thus far, and I do appreciate those. And everything that's brought up, Brother Driver mentioned this, everything that's brought up in your meetings does not go on a ballot to be voted on. So we can't use that for some, and don't use it for other things. Let's be fair about it. Number three, and this is just to be honest here, and I ask you this, will there be any conflict of interest for any of the commissioners that profit will be made? Will there be any profit made by Commissioner Morgan? I respect you, and I ask this respectfully because I know you have a heart for Carroll County and you do a lot, and I ask this respectfully. But would there be profit made as an individual if alcohol sales come in on a Sunday, or any other commissioner by allowing alcohol sales? Even the building of any liquor stores, any vineyards, any convenience stores. As we know, Commissioner Powers has helped build, that's his business, but we know that he helped build the one in Whitesburg and has dealings with vineyards around Carroll County. Is that a conflict of interest? That's all I want to know, and that's all the question I want to ask there on that. Number 4, I believe that this is a stepping stone for a spiraling downward of other immoral activities to be brought in at a later time. And you say, well, that would never happen to us. We didn't think this would ever happen. Examples,
Mr.
marijuana,
Reynolds.
strip joints,
Mr.
anything
Reynolds,
else.
time, please,
All right,
sir.
now end with this, respectfully. I believe that Sunday is the Lord's day still. And as a Christian, I am trying to uphold and protect that belief. Thank you for your time.
Onelia Camp.
My name is Onelia Camp, and I live at 300 Highway 113 North, Carrollton, Georgia. And considering coming here tonight, I've been going through my little brother's stuff. He's in a bad way right now. And I came across this letter, and I said, I gotta read it. This was when he was in rehab in 2013, and it's his letter that he wrote while he was in rehab. Says, goodbye letter to drugs. And yes, alcohol is a drug. A lot of us don't think of it that way. Even wine, anything that contains alcohol is a drug. All right, he says, it's always hard to say goodbye. In this case, it's like a breath of fresh air, letting go of something that's had a grip on me for the better part of 40 years of my life. It's like saying goodbye to an old friend, except you were not my friend. You've been out of my life for a while now, and I can see and think clearly now. I can see where my life was going with you in it, and had me believing that this is the way life is supposed to be. You led me to make some bad decisions, to distance myself from my friends and family. You've played with my health. It's not all your fault. I was weak and thought I needed you. There has been times when I thought I could leave you alone, like the times I couldn't eat or sleep, but you always got my cravings going again. All the times my sister wanted me to spend time with her, you were always in the way. You have cost me a lot of money. I guess I always knew this day would come. Now that it has, I feel a freedom I haven't felt in a very long time. It's been over a month now, and I haven't craved you. I just hope and pray God and my family will forgive me for letting you control my life for so long. I should have done something about you a long time ago, but this time I have made my mind up. There can be no other way. I still have a few good years left. I intend to live them without you. I wish you could talk to tell me one simple thing. Why did you pick me? So now all the lies and false promises are over. I see you now as the life destroyer and deceiver that you are. It's time for me to move on with my life. I'm sure you'll find another life to destroy goodbye forever. My brother is lying in Tanner Medical right now on his deathbed. He found his old friend again, and he's in decline and probably won't make it. The doctors say the prognosis is not good. But who's the next victim? What child of yours or grandchild of yours will his old friend pick up next? Please, please, I just ask that you consider this from the depth of your soul and vote no.
Thank you. Mary Nell Harding.
My name is mistakenly put on that list, but I will tell you, Pastor Kelly Ronalds covered it completely for me.
Thank you. Mr. Josh Williams.
Hello, Josh Williams, 9120 Turnwood Drive, Villa Rica, Georgia. Ephesians 5:15 through 18. See then ye walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time because the days are evil. Wherefore be ye not unwise, but understanding what the will of the Lord is. And be not drunken with wine, wherein is excess, but be filled with the Spirit. Psalm 104:1. Bless the Lord, O my soul. O Lord my God, thou art very great. Thou art clothed with honor and majesty. He causes the grass to grow for the cattle, and herb for the service of man, that he may bring forth food out of the earth, and wine that maketh glad the heart of man, and oil to make his face shine, and bread which strengtheneth man's heart. Ecclesiastes 9:7. Go thy way, eat thy bread with joy, and drink thy wine with a merry heart, for God now accepteth thy works. The Lord causes the grasses and herbs to spring up, even the alcohol producing vines and grains, that man may drink with a gladdened or merry heart. Saying that it is wrong to drink wine due to the risk of drunkenness is like saying it is a sin to eat food due to the risk of gluttony, or to earn money due to the risk of avarice, or sleep due to the risk of slothfulness. Moreover, if wine and the partaking of it were inherently wrong, I fully trust that God would not have used it as a type of his atoning blood and of the blessings that flow from it. Proverbs 3:9, honor the Lord with thy substance and with thy first fruits of all thine increase. So shall thy barns be filled with plenty, and thy presses shall burst out with new wine. In Luke 7:33-34, we read, for John the Baptist came neither eating bread nor drinking wine, and ye say he hath a devil. The Son of Man, Jesus Christ, is come eating and drinking, and you say, behold, a gluttonous man and a wine-bibber, a friend of publicans and sinners. They would not be accusing him of being a wine-bibber if he was only drinking unfermented grape juice, as some erroneously claim. Likewise, they would not be comparing the Lord to someone who did not drink wine at all, unless our Lord Jesus Christ drank wine. The gifts of God are often blasphemously spoken of by men. Would there were no wine, O folly, O madness, when other men sin. Do you find fault with God's gifts? And what great madness is this? What, did the wine, O man, produce this evil? Not the wine, but the intemperance of such as take an evil delight in it. Would you then say, were there no drunkenness, no luxury? Would there no wine? Were there no steel because of the murders, no guns because people die, no night because of the thieves, no light because of the informers, no women because of adulteries? And in a word, you will destroy all, but do not this, for this is of a satanical mind. Do not find fault with the wine, but with the drunkenness. There is an abundance of evidence that godly men and women throughout history drank wine, ale, and the like without fear of sin, for they did so in moderation. It was often safer to drink wine and ale than water due to the lack of modern purification methods in their day. Such drinks, especially ale, accompanied most meals, celebrations, and even could be found in places of worship when beverages were needed, just like our Lord Jesus Christ, who turned the water into wine at the wedding. Now, I am not trying to encourage anyone to drink. Abstain if you trust it is right for you and yours. My point is that we must never slander the brethren, disassemble from them for ungodly reasons, including arguments based upon man's traditions, or otherwise call evil that which God has called good. And not just good, but a blessing when rightly used by the people of God. Thank you.
Mr. Colton and Samantha Diamond. Oh, thank you very much. Carla Cosper, I think this is a zoning. Carla Cosper. And a Preston Kramer, maybe a zoning. We'll get to zoning. Mr. Joseph Ludeman. That's zoning as well. Miss Teresa Leslie.
And now for something completely different. We're going to have a little pause here for a moment. I'm Teresa Leslie, 488 Walker Road, Carrollton, and I'm not here to say anything about alcohol this evening. I'm here on behalf of the Carroll County Humane Society. I hate to interrupt the flow, but what I have to say is about an important issue as well, and I just want to let you guys know about what the Humane Society is doing to help the animals of Carroll County in ways that, so that you guys can help us get the word out. As you know, it's been brutally cold a lot this winter, and there's more bad weather ahead, I'm sure. And a lot of people in the community have been very concerned about animals left out in the cold. You know, animals are suffering, animals are dying because of the weather. And so we are addressing that issue. We urge people to take their animals inside when it gets really cold. What we've been telling people is bring the animals into your homes when it's too cold for you or the animals to be outside. If you absolutely cannot or will not take them into your living space, then put them in a garage or put them in a basement. If you absolutely will not or cannot do that, then make sure that if they're outside, they have adequate shelter, that they're, and fresh food and water, and that they're taken care of. And so we want to help people to do that because we know there are some people who are still going to have their animals outdoors. Animal control gets 60 to 100 calls a week with concerns for welfare. And so what we are doing is, rather than just condemning people for leaving their animals outside in the cold to suffer, we're trying to help them. So we've launched a program called Shelter Me, in which we provide dog houses and bedding for those dog houses, blankets and straw or whatever they might need, for people who can't afford to have a dog house or just don't know they should have a dog house. We've spoken to animal control. They know about us, and after a little pushing on our part, they've started calling us when they encounter a home where they should have a dog house and they don't, and we've been delivering them. And so we will continue to do that. This will be a permanent program, and so we want you guys to let when you get calls from constituents about people who need help with housing for their animals, let them know that we're here to help and send them our way. So in the short run, we want to make sure that the animals are taken care of. It's not the animals' fault they're out there suffering in the cold, so we want to help them. And in the long run, we're looking forward to working with some of you on new ordinances to maybe mitigate the situation even more. But that's for another day, and I'll be happy to help in any way I can, and so will the Humane Society. So now, back to alcohol sales, because I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Mr. Harry McCord.
My name is Harry McCord. I live at 505 Cross Plains Road, and I'm definitely against a referendum for alcohol. The gentleman earlier read a bunch of scriptures, but back then, people weren't behind automobiles that weighed over 2 tons, driving them around on our streets. And if this referendum is put to the ballot and it passes, it's just going to be another cog in the wheel of sending us down the road to become a metro county. And I don't want to see that. I love this county. I've lived here for 20 years, and my family's been here since 1800. And people talk about the right thing to do. Maybe in man's eyes it's the right thing to do, but what about God's eyes? This is like an abortion doctor who says, I do abortions to keep people from going to the back alleys, but they don't consider that they might not have an abortion at all if they weren't there. Let's see. To keep, refrain from, my Bible says that we're to refrain from strong drink. My Bible also says that we're to keep the Sabbath day holy. I also hear that by not letting us vote, they are being dictators. In my opinion, they're being caregivers because the commissioner should know that the true cost of alcohol sales, first of all, is grief of families who lose loved ones because someone drives impaired, or how hard it must be to live with the fact that you had hurt or killed somebody while driving to and from the store or a bar. I think that people vote for alcohol sales because they are not informed. They think that it will help raise revenue, but they don't know the true cost. However, this ends, it will cost has the cost cast ballot of the grief. However this ends, it will cost a big cost, grief, wrong, or for a lot of people. In other words, it'll cause a lot of grief for a lot of people, whether it passes or not. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. McCord. Ms. Juanice Odell.
Thank you, Commissioner. Juanice Odell, 39 Laurel Lakes Drive, Carrollton, Georgia. I stand in opposition of the referendum to be put alcohol sales on Sunday. In 1990, my sister, Denise Rivers, was killed by a drunk driver. That was 28 years ago. I sent each of you an email this week expressing my concern. Our family's life was forever changed on that day. I can't bring her back, but everything I say and do can help this event from happening in another family's life. I stand in support of my pastor, Stephen Peoples, and what he said about the alcohol sales. But I'm coming to you from a personal experience of how it changed my family's life. The gentleman who spoke, I believe it was Josh Williams, who spoke about people overeating and gluttony. But to my knowledge, no consumption of any food item has ever killed anyone, another person's life, by choosing to eat a particular type of food. So as I stand before you, I ask you to evaluate your own personal lives. If it were your child, or if it were your spouse, or your mother, or your daddy, or any other human being, would you want that guilt on your hands of adding another day of alcohol sales? It's just like in my message I said, is one more day of alcohol sales worth your loved one's life? Thank you.
Thank you. That's it for the public comment section. We'll go to move into the financial session, item 8. Under tonight's agenda, we'll ask item 8.1. We'll get a financial recap for December of 2017 from Mr. Lehman Stevens, our Finance Director.
All right, thank you, Chairman. Through the 6 months ending December 2017, the general fund revenue was $32,368,000. This is 65% of the budgeted revenue for the fiscal year. This compares to the 6 months ending December of 2016 of $30,531,000. So we've had an increase in revenue of $1.8 million for over 2016. During the same time period, the expenditures for the 6 months ended December 2017 totaled $23,775,000, and this is 48.24% of the budgeted expenditures. And this compares to the prior year of expenditures of $23,789,000. So we have actually had a decrease in expenditures of about $15,000. On December 31, 2017, the general fund balance was $18,754,000, and that's an increase of $2.9 million over December 31, 2016. And on December 31st, 2017, the general fund cash balance was $19,468,000, and this is approximately 144 days of operating cash for the county.
Thank you. Any questions from the staff or for the board? No questions. Next item on the agenda is item 8.2, the gymnastics facility bids. We'll call on Operations Director, Mr. Gerald Pilgrim.
Commissioners, you have for you, and we've talked about it on several other occasions, but we have the bids in. We've actually completed all the due diligence with the architect. We had some questions that we wanted to make sure, if there were any discrepancies, and all that has been affirmed that, they feel good with their bid. So, but I just want to comment, though, just briefly, publicly thank Charles Pope. This bid would have been a lot higher if we didn't have the ability to self-perform a lot of the site work. And that's through the commitment of y'all being able to supply the equipment for the county, and then Charles's labor and the talented labor force he has. So we're asking y'all to, for the consideration. And Vince Collins would have been here. He was actually here a moment ago, but his daughter has broken her arm. So he's actually had to go home. So sorry he's not here. But to accept the low bid of Levering Construction for a price of $3,329,000.
I make a motion.
We have a motion, we have a second. Now any discussion from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor? All those opposed?
Thank you very much. Charles Pope started tomorrow.
And we all thank Mr. Charles Pope. Thank you, Charles. Now we move into the business session. We'll go to item 9.1, referendum on Sunday alcohol sales. We'll call on County Attorney Stacy Blackman. And I failed when we made an amendment change to call Stacy up to let you know what we made the change for tonight, or what the request was. So Stacy, if you will please explain what item 9.1 was and what we're looking at as 9.1 now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Yes, 9.1 was a resolution to consider a referendum on Sunday sales by the drink for beer, wine, and alcohol, distilled spirits, as well as Sunday's package sales of malt beverages and wine. So now we have removed the Sunday sales by the drink of beer, wine, and distilled spirits, and we're only considering the Sunday sales, the package sales for malt beverages and wine. And so you have that revised resolution in front of you, and OCGA section 3-3-7P authorizes calling a voter referendum to consider the package sales by retailers of malt beverages and wine on Sundays between the hours of 12:30 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. And so this is not liquor sales or any liquor stores in the county. It's only package sales by retailers of malt beverages would be like beer and ale and wine. So if you approve this resolution, the election superintendent would call the referendum, and it would be held on May 22nd, and it would be advertised once a week for 4 weeks before the election date of May 22nd. And then the statute calls for a specific ballot question, and it reads, shall the governing authority of Carroll County be authorized to permit and regulate package sales by retailers of both malt beverages and wine on Sundays between the hours of 12:30 p.m. and 11:30 p.m. And then if it's approved by the voters at the ballot, then it would be effective after that. I would recommend an effective date, if you approve this, of June 5th, 2018, because that would be the date of your next meeting following the voter referendum. So, do you have any questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Now, any discussion from the board?
Chairman, I'd like to say that I want to thank everyone for coming out here tonight, and I really do appreciate y'all coming out and showing y'all's concerns about this issue. I know a lot of y'all have emailed me, and I really do appreciate it. And I read each one of them, and I've had a lot of prayer over this one issue. But I'd like to say something to the Christian voters out here. In 1962, Christians sat on their couches and they allowed prayer to get taken out of school. We move on up 10 years later, in 1973, the Christians are still sitting on their couches, and that we've allowed abortion to get passed in this nation. And after that, we've killed 54 million babies, and that's a tragedy. That's a tragedy on the Christian people of this community for not standing up and showing their right. Come on back up to 1989, over across the county line in Douglas County, we had a band person that stood up and said they did not want to hear a prayer at a football game. And Christians still are sitting on their couches at home, and they're allowing the liberals to get up, and they're allowing the liberals to take hold of what's happening, and they still didn't do anything. You move up to 2016, Barack Hussein Obama pushed the gay marriages on us, and Christians are still sitting on here, but yet they're calling me and talking real ugly to me on the phone and stuff. I ask y'all right now, if y'all are against this referendum, for y'all to stand up and show Carroll County that the Christians have a voice in Carroll County. It's time for the Christian men, it's a time for the Christian women to stand up. In 1988, I was hit by a drunk driver. The man that saved my life is sitting in this auditorium right now. When he put me on the helicopter, they gave my daddy a 10% chance of me living. I spent the hospital from July the 22nd to November, I can't remember the exit date, when I got out of the hospital, and I stayed flat on my back for the rest of the remaining of the year. If it was not for Christian folks that was come to my bedside, and if it was not for my daddy praying for me, I probably would not be sitting in this seat right now. And I do want to thank Ernie Carter, and he's sitting right there. He's a testimony of how bad I was. He'll tell you he gave my daddy zero hope for me to make it through the night. So yes, I know this alcohol thing is very serious, and Chairman, I'm sorry I'm taking this time, but I have to do it. Christians, it's time for y'all to do something. It's the right thing to do. We live in America. It's the right thing to do to let people vote. Y'all need to get up and go to the polls and vote this thing down, please.
We have a motion and a second on the board. Any other discussion from the board? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Now we'll move to item 9.2. Resolution for Sunday sales for our wineries. We'll call on Stacy Brightman as well. And Stacy, please explain what this is, ordinance that is not facilitated the same way.
Correct. This is a resolution to amend an ordinance. This is not calling for a voter referendum. This is an ordinance that you all, if you approve it, would be effective tonight after if it was approved. So OCGA Section 3-6-21.2 allows the sale of wine in a tasting room or other licensed farm winery facility on Sundays from 12:30 p.m. until 12 midnight if approved. So if you approve this, we would amend Ordinance 6-197 to delete it, which currently says no Sunday sales, and also amend Ordinance 6-198G to allow on Sunday the sales from 12:30 p.m. to 12 a.m. So this would allow Sunday sales in farm wineries.
Make a motion to approve.
Stacy, I need to speak up.
Wait a minute,
Chairman.
we have a motion on the floor. I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Now, Commissioner Powell.
Chairman and the rest of commissioners, on the winery, I did have some financial in the local winery in here. I no longer have any financial ties to that business. I have no ties to anything concerning wineries, concerning liquor stores, concerning convenience stores, and I just want to put that on the record, Ms. Stacy.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Now, any further discussion from the board? Seeing none. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. Next item on the agenda, item 9.3, resolution to abandon Old Folds Road. We'll call on County Attorney Stacy Blackman.
This is to begin a process to abandon a small portion of Old Folds Road when the road was realigned, I think back in the 90s, Charles. And so there's a small tract of .016 acres that would be abandoned, or excuse me, .16 acres that would be abandoned if we go through the process and it's approved. So this would start the process to start the advertisement and notice to the adjoining owners.
Make a motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? All those opposed?
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is item 9.4, ordinance to authorize the judicial and tax foreclosures. We're going to call on Avery Jackson.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm here today before you on behalf of the Tax Commissioner. The Tax Commissioner has before you for consideration an ordinance to allow judicial tax sales. Currently, most of the tax sales go through non-judicial foreclosure process, but sometimes when we have title issues or we can't find people to serve or things like that, the law allows the Tax Commissioner the option of a judicial tax sale. It has to be approved by the Commissioners to authorize her to do that, and so we're asking that you authorize the Tax Commissioner to go to court and have a judge approve of tax sales in certain circumstances.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion from the board? We're fortunate to have the Tax Commission here. Any comments? Any discussion from the board? Seeing none. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. Item 9.5, appointment to the Health Board. You had in your package one nomination, Ms. Catherine Grams. Is there any other nominations? If not, we'll look for a motion from the board.
I'll make a motion to nominate Catherine Grams to the Carroll County Health Board.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. Next, we'll be moving into the zoning session. Item 10 on tonight's agenda, we're going to call on Ms. Janet Hyde, County Planner, for direction. Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. First, I'd like to read the standards for considering zoning decisions. The decision by the Board of Commissioners to approve in whole or part, reject, condition, or delete an application for rezoning shall be based on, but not limited to, the consideration of the following criteria: whether the zoning proposal will permit a use that is suitable in view of the use and development of adjacent and nearby property, whether the zoning proposal will adversely affect the existing use or usability of adjacent or nearby property, whether the zoning proposal will result in a use which will or could cause an excessive or burdensome use of existing streets, transportation facilities, utilities, or schools, whether the zoning proposal is in conformity with the policy and intent of the land use plan, and whether there are other existing or changing conditions affecting the use and development of the property which gives supporting grounds for either approval or disapproval of the zoning proposal. The first item that I have is a conditional use for 2253 Lovern Road. The conditional use is to use the property as a special event center. The applicant is Bobby Bolin. This is in Commission District 6, Commissioner George Chambers. This property is 11 acres. The applicant's wanting to use 4 of it for a special event center. The property is adjacent to other agricultural and residential uses. It's bounded on all 4 sides by property which is zoned agricultural. This case was first heard by the Planning Commission and they tabled it for additional information. The applicant came back in January with additional information that the commission had wanted. Then the applicant also submitted additional information which should be in your packet with regard to his business plan and how he's planning to operate his special event venue. The applicant is present and the Planning Commission did recommend approval of this.
Okay. We'll call on the first applicant to come forward. In the meantime, policies and procedures governing the conduct of zoning hearings. The applicants or the proponents of the zoning application shall be allowed 10 minutes to present data, evidence, or opinion. Those opposed to the zoning application shall be allowed those same 10 minutes. Both sides shall be allowed 5 minutes in rebuttal if needed. First applicant.
Good evening. My name is Bobby Bowen. Address is 2253 11 Road. I'll keep it short and sweet. The plan is to have a special event center. We have a good bit of property we like to utilize. Included in my packet was basically everything that we plan to do.
Sir, would you move your microphone up just a little bit?
Okay. Is that better?
There you go.
Yeah, included in the packet is everything we plan to do. The only thing that isn't in the packet is I got everything inspected by the fire marshal. But yeah, that's, like I said, short and sweet.
And I think it stated in here that you'd be using tents. You didn't have any fixed.
We have buildings, but we're not using them right now. We're going to use tents.
Okay.
The buildings are going to be used eventually, but like I said, they got to get up to code and everything, and we haven't had those inspected yet. So.
All righty. Anybody else here to speak in favor of this zoning request? All righty. We'll ask, is there anyone here tonight in opposition of this conditional use permit? We'll ask a second time. Item 10.1 under the zoning session, anyone here in opposition of the conditional use request? Seeing none, we'll look for a recommendation from the board.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you.
The next item that I have is a rezoning for 3784 Shady Grove Road. This property is currently zoned agriculture. The applicant is asking to rezone it to commercial. The applicant is Joseph Ludemon. The property is 1.3 acres. He is asking to rezone this for the purpose of storage of towing and garage of repossessed vehicles. Sorry about that. The applicant owns a repossession business and plans to store vehicles that have been repossessed, and the storage will be on a temporary basis. The Planning Commission recommended approval with conditions. Those conditions being construction of a solid fence and a berm to contain any runoff of gas or oil, and the applicant is present. I do want to point out that there was a petition that was submitted you all should have gotten copies of that in your packet. That was submitted at the Planning Commission meeting.
Thank you. Request for the applicant.
My name is Joseph Ludeman. I have a business at 381 Kenny Lake Road. I've owned and operated that business since 2004. Can you hear me fine? No?
Raise it up. There you go.
Anyhow, I've operated the business there since 2004. This year, being 2017, the county has become with some sort of issue about that, and it has asked me to relocate. With this business here going into this building, it is no new development. The only new development would be utilities that's been removed from the property, and the construction of the fence that would go into the property that the recommending zone would ask for. The building is an 11,000 square foot metal fab building. It's been there since '99. I have a copy of the permit number when Mr. Perry asked for the building to be approved. The time for the building to, have a dispute against it was in '99. Somehow it's fell through the cracks as not a commercial building. I have business license here for 7 years. Mr. Perry, which is one of the oppositions against it, took out himself. I also have pictures of the building. And in this, I also have the permit number where he pulled a permit. I think really what we got here is a case of a man that has lost everything, and I do feel sorry for him. But basically, you can't do one thing and then tell somebody else they can't perform the same operations as he did. He performed a aircraft manufacturing business there. He also prepared metal buildings there. He had heavy trucks come in and out. This building, which is already existing, is fairly close to his house. He lost it in a foreclosure. I'm very sympathetic about that. But I would like to bring this eyesore and make it an operable business again.
Anyone else here to speak on item 10.2 in favor? Anyone else to speak in favor? Yes, sir.
At the recommending board, there was another piece of property there that was close to Hillside Drive. And during that recommending board, there was a huge communication difference between which property was up for vote. And I'm not sure if there's very many people here that's here for that or if they're here for this actual property. But the person pulled the Hillside Drive property, so you're no longer going to see that. And I just wanted to make sure we was clear on what it was that we're for and against.
Okay. Thank you. Now we'll ask anybody else in favor. Seeing not, we'll reset the clock. Is there anyone here in opposition of item 10.2? Please come forward. You have 10 minutes collectively.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Darrell Perry. I live at 3782 Shady Grove Road. Now, I moved out to Carroll County in the early 80s. I was the only person out on that road, me and the Swaffords and the Davises. I built a building out there in 86, 87, I think it was, and started up with business. Over through the years, things went bad. In 2007, when everything come in and hit, it done aviation in. Whenever 9/11 took effect, it put a world of hurt on the aviation, period. The bank in Douglasville never went under. The bank in Douglasville
Turn it on, Jill, there, make sure.
The bank in Douglasville, Georgia, whenever they went under, the FDIC come in and took over the building. At the time, we had already set up, we applied for grants and everything to recycle tires and everything. Whenever the FDIC took over the bank, they took my money, they took everything I put out, my buildings and everything from me, and did not give me a chance. They come in and just seized the building, did not get a writ of possession order, nothing to court. They come in and locked the doors and took it, and I had nothing I could do about it. I lost thousands and thousands of dollars in there. I'm not griping about that. What I'm saying tonight is that this building sits within 75 feet of my bedroom on my house, and under an international fire code in which I have researched, it plainly states that this building is in violation with automobiles being parked inside the building for storage because of fuel and everything. I have a man here tonight to speak in behalf of the fire code and everything on this here. I'm not trying to blame nobody. It was something that happened. I had no control over it. Whenever 9/11 hit and then 2007 came, there's a lot of people that lost. A lot of businessmen lost. And I was one of them that took the big bath. But I asked today, you know, this man's wanting to put a repossession business in my backyard. I have people knocking on my doors at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning wanting to know about their cars and everything. The building is so close to my house that it hurts the sale of my home. My home value dropped from $400 and something thousand down to $299,000 now, trying to sell my home. And I ask tonight that this not be rezoned commercial and it be put back to agricultural. I have a man here that'd like to speak to you about the National Building Code. Fire.
Absolutely. Pass them to George, he'll pass them down, thank you. And who's gonna speak on the code? Come right up.
How you doing? Thank you, Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners, for allowing me to get up and speak and stand with my friend and neighbor, Mr. Perry, on this issue.
Who are you?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is James Camp, 210 Lake Ridge Drive, Temple, Georgia. I'd first like to call the Commission's attention to Carroll County's own Code of Ordinances, Section 18-26, which is the Building and Construction Codes. And in the Code of Ordinances, it has a list of different international codes that the county says that buildings must go by in order for them to exist in the county. And if you look under subsection 8, the International Fire Code is one of those standards of codes that buildings must apply to. And I have some sections here from the fire code that I think apply to this situation and would affect the decision that y'all have to keep from rezoning from agricultural to commercial. In section 311 of the fire code, temporarily unoccupied building structures, premises, or portions thereof must be safeguarded and maintained in accordance with section 311.1.1 through section 311.6. And the pertinent subsection of that is section 311.2.2, which is fire protection, which states that fire alarm, sprinkler, standpipe systems shall be maintained and in operable conditions at all times. It is to my knowledge that this building contains no such sprinkler or fire alarm systems. Furthermore, the building must have fire resistance rated partitions, fire barriers, and firewalls separating each of the vacant spaces from the remainder of the building and also on the outside. And Mr. Perry raised a good point. With his house being less than 75 feet away, there is no firewall on that side of the building that would keep a fire from jumping from that building into Mr. Perry's bedroom. Furthermore, when it comes to storing vehicles and other fueled equipment inside of a building, buildings or rooms must be constructed in accordance to the International Building Code, which allow for that. Now, the code and the International Building Code and the Fire Code does allow for vehicles inside of a building for display purposes, but for them to be in there, they can only be in there if the batteries are disconnected and the fuel tanks do not exceed 1/4 tank or 5 gallons, whichever is less, and the fuel tanks and fill openings are supposed to be closed and sealed to prevent tampering. And vehicles, boats, and other motorcraft equipment are not to be fueled or defueled while inside the building. And the last exhibit I'd like to call to your attention, this is a satellite photo of the property in question. The property that the gentleman wished to have rezoned from agricultural to commercial is circled in red. The buildings circled in blue are residences around that lot where that building sits. And Mr. Perry's residence is circled in green. As you can see, it's in close proximity. With that building not having the adequate fire safety protection in it, it is a fire hazard to Mr. Perry's residence and also to all the other residences that surround it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak in opposition?
Well, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to be up here. My name's Marie Beal. I live at 105 North Hillside Drive, Carrollton, Georgia. I was a postal carrier on Shady Grove Road. I've just retired, and the hazards on that road, there's so much traffic anyway. I've had many close incidences of traffic coming out of Mr. Perry's, and he was one of my customers. Coming out of his driveway, there's a hill as it comes up, and any vehicles going in and out of there would be hazardous and they speed. Shady Grove Road is they think it's a raceway because there's been 2 kills about 15 years ago. 2 boys were killed on Shady Grove Road because they came around a curve and down the hill where that flat area straightway is. And I oppose this being changed from agriculture to commercial. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in opposition? We're at 7, almost 8 minutes. Got 2 minutes, 10 seconds left.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I'm Bob Fountain, 4255 South Hickory Level Road. I am the current president of the Hickory Level Community Association, and I'm here on behalf of at the request of our residents to stand in opposition to this rezoning. A couple of things of concern to our community is Hominy Creek, the Hominy Creek watershed, and the Little Tallapoosa River. We are dealing with enough contaminants in there, and our biggest concern in that area is not whether or not Mr. Lauderman, the petitioner, is going to put cars in there for storage, but instead it is the potential that in a year, 2 years, 5 years, Mr. Lauderman decides to sell that property zone commercial, and subsequently a wrecker service, for example, moves in there dragging wrecked cars with leaking antifreeze, with leaking transmission fluid, motor oil, etc., that then migrates and from stormwater runoff runs into the Hominy Creek, Little Tallapoosa watershed, further contaminating that and the drinking water utilization within the county. I empathize with Mr. Lauderman and his petition. I recognize that we've got an 11,000 square foot building centered on a 1.3 acre property that deeply concerns us from 2 ways. One is, how did that property ever get built on that land without somebody catching the fact that it was an agricultural property? It has been related to me, factual or not, that at one time this property got zoned commercial and then subsequently rezoned agricultural. The other concern is, how does an individual with a agricultural residential property zoning get 3, 4, 5, 6 business permits to operate a commercial business on that piece of property? So I think this commission has some concerns that they need to look into as to how these things have occurred and allowed to go on over the last 10 years, let's say. The second is the comments that were just made by this individual
Now we're at-
about the fire
We're at
codes.
10 minutes.
About the fire codes. Subsequently, if that building doesn't meet fire codes now, it didn't meet fire codes when Mr. Perry put it in. It didn't meet fire codes when Mr. Perry was allowed to run 3 businesses there, and that should be a deep concern to this commission, as it is the residents. We sit on the border of this property. My residents are not happy with the commercial operation going in there, and we stand opposed to the operation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that's all for the 10 minutes for those in opposition. We'll now go to the rebuttal, to where everybody will have, both sides will have 5 minutes. So we'll call on the applicant.
I'm a little concerned on how he's a professional to speak about the fire codes, like I was led to believe. I'm not sure I didn't get a badge number or how he was authorized to speak of any authority. I do get his opinion, and it's very well warranted. Also on this, in the pictures, you've seen Mr. Perry put several tires in there. He didn't mention that that was a fire concern. My premise here is not to store vehicles in the building. My premise here is to store the vehicles to the side of the building and use the building as my business. Will there be vehicles in there? Yes. Most likely I'll be working on my own vehicles there. Also, I'll have numerous projects that I operate now. They're not business related, but they're just my projects. This is an 11,000 square feet building. I don't know if y'all grasp how big that building is, but it's not a very small building. You could probably fit 24 of these rooms in that building. The next thing is I believe those tires was dumped there illegally. Me as purchased in this building, I have to go in there and remove these tires. That's a huge lump sum right there. According to ordinances, there should have been a bond put in place to protect the dumping of those tires, which is what this is at this point. Anyhow, I will be going in there and removing these tires. I will be going in there and fixing this building. I will be operating my business out of this building. As far as my trucks, they're no more than a pickup truck. It would be no different than a hay farmer pulling out of the field with his hay. We operate out of a pickup truck. It's a F450. I have 3 of them. I also have a rollback. My intent was not to come in here and stir up the community. My intent here is just to keep my business in this community.
Thank you. Still 2.5 minutes left. Anyone else in favor under the 5-minute rebuttal? Seeing none, stop the clock, reset. 5 minutes for the rebuttal in opposition. Anybody else in opposition?
My name is Donald Brook. My address is 3821 Shady Grove Road. While I was not part of the original opposition comments, I do want to point out there are a couple of errors that exist in the applications, as well as procedural errors dealing with the publication of the agenda meeting for the Planning and Zoning Committee meeting. The agenda was never published on the website, so therefore there were people that may have had a voice that should have voiced it at that meeting, missed the opportunity to in that regard. While I personally missed the signage out there and would have spoken at that point in time, the agenda was my other method of understanding what was going on at that meeting. Secondly, on the applications for the zoning change as well as the conditional use, there are some date errors on there. So from a documentation standpoint, the county needs to consider those documents, whether they can be amended or whether they need to be resubmitted and acted on in that fashion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else in opposition?
Commissioners, in the early 80s, there was no zoning in Carroll County. I only complied to the building department and to the commission and also to the county commissioner at the time for business license. I applied for them They gave me a business license, and I operated in the early 80s. Once again, I repeat, there was no one living in that community but 3 people. And then 3 people approved to the county that it was fine to operate there. I'm not trying to be arrogant or nothing about it. I'm just concerned that this building catch on fire in the middle of the night with cars in it. Me and my wife and my children, we burn up. And I don't want my house on fire with a car exploding in that building and be burned to death in my home. If you was in my shoes, you wouldn't want it in your backyard neither. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else in opposition? Under the rebuttal.
My name's David Mewborn, and I live at 4300 South Hickory Level Road, which is about less than a mile from where this property is located at. Aside from all the other points that have already been brought up, I think what happened here, you know, like Mr. Perry said, there's only 2 or 3 people who lived there then. The majority of the homeowners who live there now, you know, their estates, their nice places and everything, had those properties been there at that time, I assure you the room would have been full of people. As now, you know, that oppose the thing. I just get the idea it should have never been there to begin with, and things just get out of hand, you know. You've got an 11,000 square foot building sitting there on 1.3 acres, which, according to what I'm told, at one time was a manufacturing hangars for airplanes, and from that to something else, and now it's full of old tires, and all this is kind of just happens without people knowing what even's going on, you know, whatever. Like I say, the majority of us didn't even live there, didn't own property there or whatever, and it's a perfect example of what Bob said earlier about, you know, how stuff gets out of hand by being it. This is an agricultural residential area. I know some of you have been there to Robert Jean's place at our picnics and everything. It's not a commercial area. I mean, the guy bought it at a repo or foreclosure for 40 grand or whatever, you know, and now he wants to turn it into commercial property, which we all know is worth a great deal more money. If he wanted a commercial property, apparently he's got one on Kenny Lake Road already that apparently he's outgrown it, I don't know. But, you know, there's plenty of commercial property in Carroll County. It costs a little more money. If you want to run a commercial business, that's where you go. You don't come in our backyard and want to try to run a commercial enterprise. Thank you.
Thank you. There's basically 1 minute left for a rebuttal under opposition.
Commissioners, my house was built there in 1901. My house has been there for over 100 years in this property. Whenever the zoning took effect was in the later part of the 80s. I only did what the county told me to do at the time. Mr. Perry was a county commissioner in Bickford and then was over building zoning. They come and told me I had to have a business license. I went and bought a business license. I'd done everything the county at the time told me to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. 30 seconds left under the rebuttal. Any opposition? Second request, any opposition to the 5-minute rebuttal? Seeing none, time is over. We'll look for a motion from the board.
I make a motion to deny.
No, sir, not at this point. Well, we're looking for a motion. We have a motion of denial.
Chairman, I'm going to second that motion due to because it was agricultural, and I don't want to turn commercial property, agriculture to commercial property, so I make the second on that.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Now, any discussion from the board?
Chairman, I'm concerned with what comes in 2 years or 3 years once we zone it commercial. That was my concern. I just want to go on record with that.
Janet, could you address the fire codes, just because whether this passes or doesn't pass, I want people in the audience to understand that if it were to pass, we're not just going to let a building sit out there without fire codes. Would you please address how, if something?
Sure. I did talk with the Carroll County Fire Marshal, And he said that because that building is less than 12,000 square feet, it does not have to meet that standard of the sprinkler. Of course, if a business does come in, they'll have to bring that building up to current code for whatever use it's going to be. The use of storing vehicles in there did not warrant the sprinkler for less than 12,000 square foot building. But again, we would address anything that comes into that building as far as the use at that time.
Any other questions?
I did, please. The gentleman made mention of some incorrect data or something on our part. Is there something that we need to,
I'm not sure what he was referring to about the dates. We are not required to put the agenda on the website. We did do the legal notice and posting of the sign is required, and we did mail out letters to the adjacent property owners, which is not required by law, but we do it.
now, is there a business that's open in there at this point? This occupational tax certificate, what's this for?
No, there's no business currently there.
No business currently there?
No.
Okay.
Any other questions, discussion from the board?
I think we're going down a slippery slope if we start letting commercial go into our ag and residential. And I mean, I don't agree with the building being there, but we need to address that.
Absolutely. Any other questions? We have a motion and a second for denial. All those that approve denial? All those against? Thank you. Look for a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?